ActionAid Nigeria has condemned the federal government's plan to implement a 5% surcharge on fossil fuels, warning that the policy will further widen the inequality gap in the country. And that's not all ActionAid has been speaking about. Concerns over the delay and partial remittance of fuel subsidy removal gains by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, following revelations contained in the World Bank's Nigeria Development Update, NDU, that's titled Building Momentum for Inclusive Growth, and accusing the federal government of failing to tackle deepening insecurity, worsening hunger, and ballooning public debt despite a stance on recent economic reforms and symbolic gestures. So earlier in the week, we caught up with the country director for ActionAid Nigeria to understand what all this is about and how it affects our income as a people. This is Dateline Abuja. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I am Kayla Magwa. Let's begin with our Abuja wrap. The president is addressing the Genco debt. He met with the class of 1999 governors and is rewarding 200 NYSC members with federal jobs, 250,000 Naira awards, and PhD scholarships. Here are those stories and more from Nigeria's presidency.
President Bola Tinubu has appealed to power generation companies in the country to give the federal government more time to complete the verification and validation of long-standing debts owed to them. During a meeting with members of the Association of Power Generation Companies, led by Sani Bello at the State House, the president assured them of his administration's commitment to resolving the liquidity challenges in the power sector. The special advisor to the President on Energy, Mrs. Olu, disclosed that a 4 trillion naira bond program has received anticipatory approval from the President to address the liquidity shortfall in the sector. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has charged state governors to prioritize the welfare of Nigerians by investing more in their future, putting more money in rural electrification, agricultural mechanization, poverty eradication, and improve investment in infrastructure. These followed the endorsement of a new ward-based development strategy, the Renewed Hope Ward Development Program, by the National Economic Council at the State House Council Chambers in Abuja. The development program is expected to ensure a double-digit economic growth through direct intervention in Nigeria's 8,809 administrative wards across all 36 states. The member representing Kiru Bebeji Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives says both President Bola Tinubu and the national leader of the new Nigerian People's Party, Rabiu Kwakwanso, are committed to peace, unity and prosperity of Nigeria. Speaking after a closed-door meeting with the president, he told journalists that the discussions focused on national issues of public interest. On the recent comments by the NNPP leader criticizing the performance of the Tinubu administration regarding northern development and inclusion, Rep. Jibrin said everyone is entitled to their opinion. President Bola Tinubu has announced the immediate employment of 200 National Youth Service Corps members into the Federal Civil Service, awarding each recipient with 250,000 Naira for their outstanding service during the 2020 to 2023 service year. The president, who was represented by the Minister of State for Labour and Employment, Nkiruka Onyejocha, at the combined President's NYSC Honours Award ceremony in Abuja, celebrated the awardees for their discipline, commitment, selflessness, teamwork, patriotism, and integrity. 10 former corps members who sustained varying degrees of disability while serving were also offered federal employment.
ActionAid Nigeria is kicking against the fossil fuel surcharge and demanding accountability on several issues. We caught up earlier in the week with Andrew Mamedu, the country director of ActionAid Nigeria, and he broke down the issues with us in this interview. Please watch this. Dr. Andrew Mamedu. Welcome to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you, Kayla.
All right, so I just need to understand. Anytime I hear that my money is about to be taken or fuel is about to cost more, I just want to understand what this petroleum surcharge is and what it means for us. I mean, I hear it's not new, but it's going to be starting January next year. What does this mean and how is it touching our money again?
Okay, thank you very much, Kayla. You are not alone. So a lot of Nigerians, when we hear that our money would be taken again, we get on the edge, we try to resist it, and for several reasons, obvious reasons. Tax is something that everywhere in the world, people don't like paying tax, but people have to pay tax. But it gets easier to pay tax when there is value for money. So when you pay tax and you see the services that the tax is rendering to you as a citizen, then it becomes easier to pay tax. Talking about the petroleum surcharge, it's part of the bill, the acts that has been signed into law now by the president. So went through the whole process of the National Assembly consultation, and it was passed by the National Assembly, and of course the president has signed it into law. It would only start implementation in January 2026. So it's not a new act of parliament, but just that people are beginning to engage the document. So even though it has been signed into law, it's an act, we're looking at the implication by the time we get to January 2026. And that's why this whole conversation is coming up.
What is the implication?
So the implication is simple. 5% of fuel, let me pick the easiest one.
Okay.
So 5% of fuel, when you go to your filling station, your fuel price is going to increase by 5%. So if 1 liter used to cost 1,000 naira, it then means that you would then pay 1,050 naira for 1 liter. If your car takes about 50,000 naira to fill it, it then means that you will pay 52,000 naira, 52,500 naira to fill your car. So you will pay an additional amount to fuel your car. And it does not just end there. The implication is that petrol in Nigeria is one of the produce you say is perfectly inelastic. What does that mean? It means that an increase in the price does not necessarily make consumers find alternative. They still have to stick to it. So we don't have so much of alternative to petrol. So once you increase price of petrol, people will still come to buy fuel. People will still go out. People will still go to their work, go to other social
and there's no hope that the CNG initiative would have taken root and spread to all the nooks and crannies of this country.
So the CNG has started. So that's part of the call. The CNG has started, but it has not gotten to the point where it becomes a clear alternative. So for us, the road transport still contributes over 98%, 99% of our daily movements across the country.
This is going to ripple into the high cost of food, isn't it?
So that's the thing. So everything is going to increase. So it's going to, once fuel price increases, the person selling tomato increases, the landlord increases. So it's just we have seen this when we had and why are we raising this? The economy has not yet stabilized from the twin policy that the president introduced when he came into 2 years ago, came into power. And clearly the subsidy removal and the currency flotation, so that has not yet settled in. The level of inflation, yes, the rebasing of the economy. We hear that we are beginning to see the effects at the macro level. So we are beginning to see it at the GDP. GDP is increasing. We are rebasing our economy. Those are bigger things. But if you speak to everyday Nigerian, that is the micro level, the small things, we are not seeing it there at those levels yet. So if you have not seen it at those levels, this kind of increase, it's automatically impacts the micro level. Okay, so
can what you want be done?
Yeah, so I think what we want to be done, a couple of things. One is we've seen the president in past suspend such actions. So even though it's an act of parliament, it's been signed into law. So the president has got the power to initiate presidential actions and then decides to say, like, oh, we are suspending this, we are pushing it for another 6 months or another 1 year. If I were a politician, January will be a wrong time to introduce such policy. It's just less than 10 months, 11 months to full-blown campaign and elections. So it's not going to be popular. This is not a popular action. So taxation, when it comes to 1 year to election, you are careful. So I assume that the president and the president handlers will be able to discuss and negotiate this, look at the implication. And I also assume that the opposition will be waiting to take advantage of this. So the president needs to understand that. And for the sake of Nigerians, but most importantly, where we stand and is where, for the sake of Nigerians, I think that should be postponed. Let's hold on this. Let's make sure that the micro level begins to feel the impact, the level of poverty. We 133 million, we have all those figures, number of persons living in poverty. The numbers are not reducing yet. So if they are not reducing yet, then we need to deal with those micro issues before we can then bring in more burden on the citizen. That's the first thing. The second thing is, with such policies, it does not normally come with framework on how to implement or how to engage them. So what would this fund be used for? In the first count, you would get about, per annum, you get about 800 billion naira from just that amount. If you pick the lesson from the Petroleum Tax Fund, the PTF, Petroleum Tax Fund, which is similar to this, we had the Petroleum Tax Fund years ago. So if you pick the lessons from that, it just clearly tells us that we need to have a proper framework. And that framework would also include a monitoring mechanism to show that this fund is actually working. It does not just filter into the system and according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, we lose about 33% of our money to corruption. So if we're losing about 33% of our money, then 33% of that money alone will just be filtered away. It does not go into the daily lives of Nigerians. Thirdly, is the issue of creating alternatives. So if we're able to create alternatives, so let's CNG. I don't know if you've heard of stories of those that have CNG vehicles. They stay in the filling station for like a whole day trying to fill their cars.
And they deal with scarcity.
And exactly. So it's scarce. It's not yet common. So, and again, if you say that we are trying to, because again, it talks about the environment. It talks about friendly environment, ensuring to encourage people to go into electric vehicles and encourage people to use CNG. But you cannot pick and choose. So you cannot say you are encouraging people to use electric vehicles and you are still taxing electric vehicles heavily through tariffs when they're imported. So the first thing to do is remove tariff from importing of electric vehicles. So let the electric vehicles support the local production of electric vehicles in country and let it be accessible, let it be available. Then a lot of people would migrate to those. And again, you also look at our internal transportation system, the rail and all of those. But superhighway, what's superhighway? Superhighway wasn't going to use. It's still going to be majorly petrol. So all the monies you are pumping in is not pointing to that direction. But on the other hand, you're saying that you also, part of the objective of that is to also discourage people from using fossil fuel. On the other hand, the current GMD of NMPCL, Bio, is being encouraged or is being told, him and his team, to increase our output, our production. So, and we are currently at 1.7 thereabouts, and we're targeting 2.1, and with the target of getting to 2.7. So we are increasing the targets for producing fossil fuel, petrol. But on the other hand, you are saying you want to tax people to stop or to minimize the use. So it is contradictory. So we need to create that framework to ensuring that, okay, we're on a sustainable path. I'll give you an example. I was in Denmark some months ago, and they have pack and pay in several places. But if you have electric vehicles, you don't pay.
That's an incentive.
So that's an incentive, yes. So it's an incentive. So clearly, what are the incentives we are going to put in place to allow use of electric vehicles, CNG, and all of that? So taxing it's something that we will probably do. There are countries that do that, so let's not run away from it. Let's not just talk about the positive. But there are countries that are doing that. But these countries have alternatives. So if they have alternative, we should create alternative before we get into taxing it. And the framework to be able to manage the whole process should be put in place.
We'll go on a short break. When we come back, we're looking at other things. One of the questions I've always had for Action Aid, and I think we talked about it before you came on air, was how many things have you demanded from the government and you actually got? I hear that there are a few. So we'll talk about them and some other things that you've been talking about in the last few weeks. So please stay with us on Dateline Abuja. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Dateline Abuja. If you've just joined us, Dr. Andrew Mamedu, the country director of Action Aid Nigeria, joins us today on the program. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Kayla, again.
I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget them. So there are a few things that you've been talking about recently, and I wanted to get you to give us updates on them. Yeah. Let's start with we talked about petrol. So the 1.5 billion naira spent on the Port Harcourt refinery, your office is asking for some kind of accountability on what the money was used for. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten any response?
No, we haven't gotten any response, and it's not just Action Aid. So civil society generally, citizens generally, it is not a favor. The government is not doing us a favor. There is a contract that binds the government and the citizen, mm-hmm. and the government is obligated to be accountable to the citizens. So, and that is on that why we are calling the government to be accountable to the citizens. You are there representing the interest of the people. So if you are representing the interest of the people, it's just natural that you come back to the people and say, the people demand for something. You're able to come back and say, this is what we're demanding for. We were in a conference on financing for development, and the conversation was about, there was a big debate around loan, issues of loan, mm-hmm. how much, who decides what loan to take and all that. Yeah, the government has a constitutional responsibility to do that. Yes, if they have that responsibility to do that, but they also should listen to the people. So this loan that we are taking, these amounts we are taking, so the amount that was used to fix the refinery, the turnaround maintenance of the refinery, most of it was from loan. So those amounts, we're saying we should account for them. We should be able to say, this is what the amount has been used for. Nigerians shouldn't be taken for granted. And it shouldn't be until people go on the streets. So we engage with government as Action Aid and most other civil society organizations. We engage with government from cooperation to confrontation, but non-violence. So confrontation could also mean that the same way we do a press release, we do a press conference, we have this kind of conversation. The government should listen, but we shouldn't get to a point where we get to the streets, placards, you have an NSAS in our hand, then before government then listens, or you have the whole country tweeting and talking about it before government. It does
feel, Mr. Mamedu, like in Nigeria, the only way to get government to react is to either embarrass them, so or someone dies.
So yeah, exactly. So the government does not have to wait for them to respond. And the truth be told, you talked about how many things have the government responded to. Mm-hmm. There are things that they've responded to, but most of them are around embarrassment. So, we want to go abroad and showcase 2 years of the administration. Why are you going abroad to showcase 2 years of the administration? Nigerians spoke about it. Action Aid pushed and we talked about it. And they dropped the idea. But guess what? They didn't come back to us and say, they've dropped the idea. When they were going to do it, they just silently kept quiet about it. They kept it. Somebody, we were having a meeting. Somebody said, who told you that they're not still going to do it? I said, well, I'm not sure. This is how many months past that
might.
Now. They wouldn't. I don't think so.
When they don't think we're looking.
I don't think so. But if they do it, we will still get the feedback. We'll get the reports and all that. So yes, for the petroleum, for the turnaround of the refineries, it is a demand from the citizens. And if the Minister of Petroleum is the president, like in the last administration, then the president owes Nigerians that responsibility to say this is how, and even government is a continuum. So you have a new administration there. I'm sure you heard what happened in the National Assembly where the leadership of NNPCL was asked to go and account for some of those monies. So the same thing, we're asking for them to account for the money. So beyond just accounting to Nigerians, of course, to the National Assembly rather, is to say, Nigerians, this is what we are doing with your resources. It's about trust. If they account for such, it's easier to talk about 5% surcharge on petroleum.
Because it will be accounted for.
Because it will be accounted for. But I'm scared, I'm afraid that if I pay that 5%, it just goes the normal way, it's not accounted for. I think that's why it's for the benefit of the government and for the benefit of the citizens. So the government should see it that way. That's why we're asking for that.
You were also talking about hardships. despite several reforms of this administration.
Yeah, if you look at our budget over the years, the budget has been increasing.
Oh, yeah.
But why is it that the budget, if you're an economist, the graph is going upward, our budget is going upward, and the poverty level is going upward? So it's awkward. It's against economic principle.
Well, they say it's because of the dollar.
Yeah, so
it may seem like it's more money, but it's not really more money.
Definitely.
Because its value is less.
Yeah, so definitely our GDP has reduced drastically from, if you look at it, in terms of naira, it's increased, but in terms of dollar, it's reduced drastically. There was a time about 10, 12 years ago where we were about number one in Africa, we had the biggest GDP in Africa, biggest economy in Africa. So, but currently we're number 4. And if the currency continues to devalue, clearly we'll keep going backward. So what do we do? There are clear things that we need to do, and the government has strong economists, strong finance experts that will be able to advise them. If we're not producing more, it's simple, it's demand and supply. If you're not exporting and you are importing more, you would, okay, there are some things we hear and know, but we do not have evidence to substantiate them. So it becomes difficult, but you hear that people are giving bribes. I heard a story from somebody, I can't mention the person's name because the person says, you can't mention my name. Head of a high institution, one of the universities, College of Education, Polytechnic, they all said that they pull money together and during the budget defense, and they have to go to the Senate and the House of Rep committees to be able to engage them, and for me, it's bribe.
Yeah, but the thing is, people like that who have this sort of information as well,
Yeah.
we were tired, you know, we're tired. We know that it's happening.
So
many of us are not privy to it happening.
Yeah.
But you saw it happen.
Yeah.
So why aren't you speaking up?
Same question I asked.
Something
I said,
is wrong with you as well.
Why are you paying? Why are you going ahead? Why are you agreeing to it?
Well, you went ahead and you paid that, and then you have this information, and you didn't whistle blow, you didn't do anything.
So now this is where it comes to play with regards to our currency. Now I say, how can we catch them? How can we set trap? He said, you can't. I said, why? He said, because you change those monies, those currencies, so each university can bring as much as 50 million, 60 million naira. So all they pull all together, so all of them, they know. So you pull them together, you go and change it to dollars. So by the time you are converting and changing billions of naira within the system to dollars, and you are giving it to individuals, dollars will naturally be scarce. Dollar would naturally increase. Cost of dollar would naturally increase, and the value of our currency will keep reducing.
You talked about rural development accountability and the ranching issue. Those are the two last issues that we're going to be talking about here. What kind of responses have you gotten for that? Let's start with the ranching issue.
I'm sure you are aware now that they are talking about setting up ranching in the 6th geopolitical zone,
yeah.
ranches in the 6th geopolitical zone. So those are examples of things that. So again, it's for us.
Things that they've listened to.
Yes, they are listening to. It's not just action; it's over several stakeholders, several actors. So we work with several stakeholders in this. So these are some things that they are listening to, but sometimes they listen, sometimes they are slow in their response.
Will ranching help this farmer?
It will definitely help. It will definitely help. So it depends on the size, the magnitude. So it depends on the size, the magnitude.
Some of the state governors are saying this is not about farmers and headers.
So
that this insecurity it's calculated, it's genocidal.
So there are several contributory factors to this. But providing ranch is one of the ways to deal with it. Because if you see the trend, once it's become dry season, now it's raining season, they're going back to the north. But once it starts getting to dry season, they start coming back to us. So it's a trend, it's a pattern. So why are they doing that? They're looking for greener pastures. They're looking for food, water for their cattle. So if that's what they are looking for, if they find it somewhere, they'll probably settle there. Yes, we know there are killer headsmen. We know all of those. Those are criminals that security can then deal with. So we need to differentiate between both of them. So we're not grouping them together. So those that require those support, let's provide support for them. And if that reduces the level of insecurity, the level of farmers crisis, it reduces by 50, 60, 70%, then we've gone a long way. Then the security forces would have lesser things to deal with, and they'll be able to manage it. There are conversation around some of these things are political, some of these are planned, they know, and you know who they are, you're not able to engage them. But if there are fewer, then you would then be able to focus and say, this has happened, why are we not getting it? But the level of occurrence is too frequent for us to even follow. So this is happening here, the next day somewhere else. So it's too frequent for us to follow. And so there has to be that whole rural community development. There has to be that. It is not a blame game. It's not about the farmers are right or the headers are right. There are good headers. There are good headers, and they are finding their way for their cattle.
So this is a good thing. So I think the only part that will be left for the government will be the education of people.
Definitely. So
because we need to understand.
and again, when we say government, trust me, it's not when we say government, we don't just point fingers or talk to only the federal government.
Of course not.
So the state government, subnational. So state and local government are also held accountable. So for us as civil society, we also talk to the Forum of Governors. We're also talking to the local government. So we're also having conversations with them. Because if you're talking about agriculture, which is supposed to be the mainstay of our economy, but they're supposed to help us in lifting millions out of poverty, if we have to do very well in the area of agriculture, it's simple. It's just the state and local government that will do it, and the federal government will provide the enabling environment and the framework to help that happen.
Well, you're doing a lot of work, and we wish you all the best. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Kayla.
Dr. Andrew Mamedu, for being with us on Dateline Abuja, and good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to my guest and to everyone who spoke to us today on the program. Please let us know the happenings in your neighborhood using the social media handles showing right now on your screens. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.